we were kids, we all heard stories from our grandparents. I remember when I was little, my grandmother would often tell me scary stories to keep me in line. When I was about 10 years old, my grandfather passed away. Grandma was left all alone, so my parents brought her to live with us. I really loved my grandmother. She was cheerful and fun. She always seemed to have an endless supply of candy in her pockets, and she would sneak me some from time to time. Grandma told me many strange and unusual stories. Most of them I don't remember anymore, but there was one that still haunts me to this day. That night, right before I went to bed, Grandma came into my room. She turned off the lights, ready to tell me a bedtime story. The moonlight filtered through the curtains. I could see clearly the deep wrinkles on her face and her dark blue eyes. That night, she told me the story of Mr. Longfingers. But before she started, there was something she wanted to tell me first. My grandmother loved taking baths. She enjoyed lighting scented candles in the bathroom, lying in warm water, closing her eyes, and escaping into a world of her own. I also asked her why she loved bathing so much. She said it was the only way she could truly relax. When she bathed, she could let go of everything, clear her mind of worries, and feel completely at peace. Back to the story. Grandma sat on the edge of my bed, her blue eyes gazing at me with warmth. I knew she was about to start, so I pulled my blanket up to my chin, ready to hide under the covers, because I knew her stories were always terrifying. You know how I love closing my eyes while bathing, right? She began. But you must remember something. Never keep your eyes closed for too long. When you're in the bath, you should never close your eyes for more than 10 seconds. If you go beyond 10 seconds, Mr. Longfingers will appear. Just from that one sentence, I already felt a chill down my spine. I pulled my blanket up and asked curiously, who is Mr. Longfingers? Grandma took a deep breath. She seemed to hesitate, as if she was unsure whether to continue. Then she turned her head and whispered in a low voice, "It's a creature attracted to heat. It follows the steam and scent we release while bathing. Some say it is a terrifying entity. It passes through the steam and enters our world, but no one has ever truly seen its face." I gasped and asked, "Why is that?" Grandma leaned in close and whispered, "My dear grandson, do you really want to know? Aren't you afraid?" I stared at her, waiting for her to continue. Grandma just smiled mysteriously. "Just remember, when you're taking a bath, never close your eyes for more than 10 seconds. If you do, Mr. Longfingers will find you. 5 seconds is fine, but never more than 10. If you exceed 10 seconds, you will feel something something strange appearing beside you and staring at you. If you go past 15 seconds, you might start hearing fingers tapping on the glass. If that happens, remember, never open your eyes." At that moment, the story ended, but I couldn't sleep at all. Every time I closed my eyes, a face would appear in my mind, staring at me through the window. When I finally fell asleep, I had a nightmare. A pair of invisible eyes, watching me in the darkness, long, slender fingers reaching out to grab me. Even in broad daylight, I felt paranoid, especially when taking a shower. Grandma's story was about bathing after all. Ever since that day, every time I took a shower, I kept reminding myself, close your eyes for only 5 seconds. At most 10, never go over 10 seconds. So when I washed my hair, I'd only keep my eyes shut for 1 to 5 seconds. Then I forced them open, even if the shampoo wasn't fully rinsed, even if the soap stung my eyes. I had to check if something was there. I had to check. Even if it was just for a second, I felt an invisible pressure. That pressure wasn't from outside. It came from my mind, not the feeling Grandma described, of being watched by something unknown. So I washed my hair very quickly. Every time, I scrubbed it furiously. I rubbed so hard that soap got into my ears and eyes. When my mom found out, she complained a little. Grandma had told me too many strange stories. One night, Grandma came into my room. She sat by my bed as usual, but this time she didn't speak. She just sat there, staring down at me, her deep blue eyes wide open. The moonlight illuminated every wrinkle on her face. Maybe Mom's complaints had made her sad. She gently said to me, "Grandma will never let anything bad happen to you, my dear. Do you understand?" I nodded. I knew Grandma would never let me be harmed. She continued, "Last time when I told you that story, just wanted you to be brave, to be strong. If you conquer your fears, nothing can defeat you. But maybe your mom was right. Maybe my story scared you too much. She lowered her head and smiled at me kindly. Even though I was only 10, I could tell that Grandma was disappointed. To help me get over my fear, she spoke firmly, "My dear grandson, don't worry, Grandma will protect you. I've already scared that monster away for you. It will never come back, okay? You don't have to be afraid anymore, alright?" I looked up at Grandma. Her smile shone softly under the moonlight. I nodded. About a week later, I woke up early. The house was unusually quiet. I didn't hear my parents. They seemed to be out. I got out of bed and heard water running in the bathroom. Who was showering so early? I walked to the door. It was closed. Suddenly, I felt nervous. Could it be that monster? I took a deep breath and knocked. No response. I turned the handle. The door wasn't locked. I tiptoed inside, and what I saw made my whole body turn ice cold, like I had fallen into a frozen well. Grandma was lying on the shower floor. Her eyes were wide open in terror. One hand curled up against her chest. The other hand, fingers splayed wide, was pressed against the glass shower door. Water was still running. The bathroom was filled with steam, and on the fogged-up glass, I could see distinct scratch marks where Grandma's fingers had dragged down. I banged on the glass, screaming for Grandma, but she was already gone. Later, my parents told me Grandma had died from a sudden heart attack. They tried to comfort me, saying it was quick, that she didn't suffer. Even though I was still young, I always felt like it wasn't that simple. And even now, I know that I was right, because I still remember when I was crying outside the shower, calling out to Grandma. I saw something, clear, deep scratches on the outside of the shower glass. Since I was a child, I've had a strange habit. Whenever I enter an empty room, I always feel like someone is hiding inside. An unexplainable fear grips me. So every time I enter the bathroom, I always say, "I see you," just in case someone is lurking, waiting to catch me off guard. Over time, this became a habit. Whenever I enter an empty room, whenever I return home from work, whenever I enter the bathroom, anytime I step into an empty space, I say, "I see you," even if no one is actually there. One weekend when I was 18, my parents had to leave town. They were attending a close friend's wedding. I was left alone at home. It felt like freedom. Too bad I didn't have many friends. Otherwise, I would have invited them over. So instead, I indulged in snacks and drinks, watched movies, played games, had fun in my own way. The next day, I even tried working as a part-time delivery driver and made some extra cash and tips. At around 8 p.m., I finished work and headed home. There was an unfamiliar car parked right in front of my house. At first, I thought it belonged to a neighbor, but then I realized our neighbors had their own parking spaces. Why would they park in front of my house? It felt strange, but I brushed it off. When I got home, I instinctively said, "I see you." Then I quickly changed into my pajamas and went to take a shower. After showering, I lay on the couch and felt like something was watching me. I remembered the strange car outside. A sense of unease crept over me. With my parents gone, I was suddenly nervous, but I tried to shake it off. I hadn't eaten since the afternoon, so I went downstairs to heat up some food. After eating, I returned to the living room. Again, I habitually said, "I see you." Then I turned on the TV, searching for a show to watch. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a huge shadow move behind the curtains. My body froze. I didn't dare move. I didn't make a sound. Chills ran down my spine. My mind went blank with fear. I had no idea what to do. The shadow moved again behind the curtain. The fabric started to pull back, revealing a man dressed in black. He stood there, staring at me, his head tilted slightly to the side. His gaze was cold and menacing. A twisted grin stretched across his face. His mouth dripped with blood. Fresh red droplets ran down his chin. And then he spoke in a deep, raspy voice. He whispered, "I see you too. I saw you too." And then he suddenly pulled out a huge knife and pointed it straight at me. My instincts kicked in. I ran without thinking. He chased after me, not letting up for a second. I bolted towards the front door. It was pouring rain outside, and the whole street was pitch black. Only a few streetlights lit the way. Then I remembered. Police officer lived across the street. I had to get there. I ran through the rain and pounded on his door. I knocked so hard my knuckles bled. I turned to look back. The man in black was standing in the middle of the street. He wasn't chasing me anymore. He just stood there smiling, like he was telling me, You can't escape. Then, the door swung open. I rushed inside and slammed the door shut. I didn't even have time to explain. I peeked outside the window, but the man in black had vanished without a trace. I had barely survived. I was lucky to be alive, but after that night, I kept wondering, what if I hadn't said, I see you? What would have happened? Every time I think about it, chills run down my spine. Is he still out there, hiding? Waiting for his next target? When I was in college, I had a very strange friend. Well, calling him a friend would be a stretch. He was more like an enemy. His name was Kai, and he was obsessed with scorpions. He only wore clothes with scorpion designs. From head to toe, everything was scorpion themed. He claimed to have dozens of scorpions at home, and he loved scaring people with them. One day, a few friends and I went to his house. It was the beginning of a nightmare. His house was huge, practically a mansion, and he lived there alone. He had a special room filled with glass containers. Inside, there were all kinds of scorpions, big ones, small ones, every color you could imagine. We couldn't believe it. We stood there, staring in shock. Then, as dinner approached, Kai asked what we wanted to eat. Jokingly, I blurted out, "How about fried scorpions?" Everyone laughed. Even Kai chuckled. But his laughter felt off. It was forced. Anyway, we ordered pizza instead. After dinner, we played some games, and when it got late, we got ready to leave. Just as I was about to step outside, Kai stopped me. He said he wanted to talk to me alone. I told my friends to go ahead, but then everything went black. I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I nearly lost my mind. My hands and feet were tied up. I was trapped inside a sealed room. I screamed at the top of my lungs. Then Kai appeared, coldly. "My children were very upset by your joke. They're in a bad mood now." Then he began placing jar after jar of scorpions in front of me. "Since we're friends, I'll only let them sting you 3 times. Pick 3 scorpions. Some are deadly. Some are harmless. Choose wisely." I was terrified. Was he a psychopath? I screamed that I'd kill all the scorpions, but he didn't care. He held up a huge scorpion. "Think fast. Which one is safe?" The scorpion's tail hovered right in front of my face, ready to strike at any moment. I was drenched in sweat. I didn't want to choose. I didn't want to play his twisted game, but he kept pressuring me. "If you don't choose in 1 minute, I'll pick for you." I had no choice. I picked one at random. Immediately, Kai placed it on my hand. The scorpion raised its tail and stabbed me. A sharp pain shot through my body. I felt like I was dying, but Kai just laughed. "Good choice. That one wasn't too poisonous. No need to panic. That was just round 1. I struggled in pain, but he checked my pulse and smiled. "Time for the next one." I hesitated, but he held up another scorpion. "Hurry up." This time, the sting hurt even more. I could barely breathe. I screamed for help. Kai examined my pupils and laughed. "You're fine." But that one was deadly. Ah! Watching someone get poisoned is so exciting. "Hold on. We've got one more round." I sobbed. "I can't breathe. Please help." But Kai just laughed. "Sorry. I can't control myself. You get one last choice. Pick carefully." I weakly pointed at one. It stung me immediately. It hurt, but less than before. No major symptoms this time. Kai smiled. "Not bad. That one had low toxicity." He clapped his hands in excitement. I blacked out. I had no idea how long I was out. When I woke up, Kai was sitting in front of me. He handed me a stack of cash. "Here's $10,000. Thanks for the entertainment. Go ahead, call the cops. Just say you got stung by accident." I pretended to agree. He grinned. My children are calm now. You can leave. He untied me. I went straight to the hospital. After some time in the hospital, I finally recovered. But after that, I couldn't suppress my anger anymore. I wanted revenge. So I called Kai. I told him I wanted to play again. He happily invited me to his house. The moment he opened the door, I punched him with everything I had. He fell hard. He tried to crawl toward his scorpion room, but I caught up. I kicked and punched him until he blacked out. Then I went to his kitchen. I grabbed a knife and killed every single scorpion, one by one. For the first time, he was the one crying. After that, I never saw him at school again, but I knew where he went. Maybe he still loves scorpions, but I just hope I never see him again.